Alright bosses, welcome back to Boss Economics World. I'm your host, the man who cuts through the mainstream media noise and serves you the cold, hard logic of capital, straight, no chaser. Today, we're strapping into our Recaro seats, putting on our driving gloves, and taking a high-speed tour of a multi-car pileup on the global economic autobahn. The wreckage? None other than the once invincible German automotive industry. The date on our dashboard is October 9, 2025, but let's be brutally honest, the warning lights have been flashing for years. What we are witnessing is not a cyclical downturn, it is a full-blown existential crisis, a Nokia moment unfolding in slow, agonizing motion for an entire nation's industrial heart. So, buckle up. Let's dissect this Teutonic tragedy, moving from the bloody headlines on the surface to the cancerous rot deep within the engine block. Let's start with the immediate pain, the numbers that are making CEOs in Stuttgart, Munich, and Wolfsburg sweat through their €1,000 suits. The news today is that Porsche, the very symbol of German performance and profitability, has joined its brethren BMW and Mercedes-Benz in reporting absolutely dismal sales figures from its most critical market, China. Think about that. Porsche, the brand that sells aspiration itself, can't move its metal. Why? Because the Chinese consumer, once a devout worshipper at the altar of German engineering, is now swiping right on slick, tech-laden EVs from local champions like BYD and, get this, the smartphone maker Xiaomi. Yes, the company that sells you budget phones is now eating Porsche's lunch. If that doesn't scream paradigm shift, you're not listening. This isn't a blip. This is a trend that's been accelerating since the early 2020s. Let's look at the data trail leading to this disaster. Back in 2023, for the first time ever, BYD dethroned Volkswagen as the best-selling car brand in China. It wasn't a fluke. By the first half of 2024, Chinese domestic brands had captured a staggering 55% of their home market. German automakers, who once commanded a dominant 25 to 30% share, saw their slice of the pie shrink to a meager 15% by mid-2025, and it's still falling. The result? BMW just slashed its earnings outlook. Combined profits for the big three German automakers cratered by over a third in the first half of 2025, according to EY. They are throttling production. VW, the Goliath with over 100 factories, is shedding staff. Robert Bosch, the world's biggest auto supplier and the quiet backbone of German industry, is axing 18,500 jobs. Continental, ZF, Schaeffler, it's a domino effect of layoffs. We're talking about a hemorrhage of 55,000 jobs in the last 2 years alone, with tens of thousands more on the chopping block. The German government, in a move of what can only be described as performative panic, has announced a €3 billion aid package. $3 billion. Let's put that in perspective. VW alone was supposed to invest over €180 billion between 2023 and 2027. $3 billion is not a rescue package, it's a sympathy card with a few crumpled bills tucked inside. It's a band-aid on a gaping arterial wound. This is the surface. It's ugly, it's brutal, and it's making headlines. But the real story, the one we talk about here at Boss Economics World, is why. Why is the finely tuned German engine seizing so spectacularly? To understand this collapse, you have to look beyond the quarterly reports. This is a story of arrogance, inertia, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the 21st century economy. I call it the three-pronged failure. Prong 1, the China miscalculation, from cash cow to slaughterhouse. For 2 decades, China was the German auto industry's ATM. They sold cars with yesterday's technology at tomorrow's prices, and the burgeoning Chinese middle class lapped it up. The German executives believed their brand prestige, the magic of made in Germany, was an insurmountable moat. They were catastrophically wrong. They failed to grasp 2 fundamental shifts. First, speed. German car development works on a glacial 5 to 7 year cycle. They engineer, test, and perfect every last bolt. Chinese EV makers, born from the hyper-competitive tech industry, operate on an 18 to 24 month cycle. BYD launched 6 new models in its Dynasty and Ocean series in 2023 alone. While Mercedes was still polishing the chrome on its EQS, Chinese rivals had already launched a successor to their competitor model. The Germans were bringing a perfectly crafted musket to a machine gun fight. Second, and far more importantly, the definition of a car. German automakers thought they were in the business of selling mechanical engineering. They sold horsepower, handling, and build quality. They saw the EV transition as simply swapping a gasoline engine for a battery and a motor. The Chinese, led by tech-first companies, understood the modern car is a smartphone on wheels. The battleground isn't the Nürburgring, it's the user interface. Consumers in China, the world's most digitized society, don't care as much about 0 to 60 times. They care about seamless connectivity, intuitive infotainment, over-the-air updates, karaoke functions, and integrated apps like WeChat and Alipay. Remember the disastrous software struggles of VW's Cariad division in the early 2020s? They spent billions in delayed key models like the electric Porsche Macan and Audi Q6 e-tron because they couldn't get the code right. Meanwhile, a company like Xiaomi, with its deep expertise in user-centric software, MIUI, designed and launched its SU7 car with a sleek, integrated OS that made the German systems look like a 2005 Nokia phone. The Germans sold a car with a tablet clumsily bolted to the dash. The Chinese sold a rolling ecosystem. The market has spoken, and it chose the ecosystem. Prong 2, the Fortress Germany problem: high costs, high hubris, high hurdles. While China was innovating at light speed, Germany was calcifying. The very factors that once made it an industrial powerhouse became an anchor dragging it to the bottom. 1. Crippling energy costs. Ever since the geopolitical shifts of 2022, German industrial energy prices have been in the stratosphere. In 2024, industrial electricity in Germany cost around 15 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour, while in the US it was under 8 cents and in parts of China, even lower thanks to state subsidies and massive renewable rollouts. You cannot run energy-intensive gigafactories and foundries when your power bill is double or triple your main competitors. It's basic math. 2. Exorbitant labor costs. The article cites Eurostat data. Let's drill down. As of 2024, German manufacturing labor costs were hovering around 45 euros per hour. In the Czech Republic, a key part of the supply chain, it was 18 euros. In China, despite rising wages, it's still significantly lower for a highly skilled workforce. This cost differential was manageable when Germany offered unparalleled quality and technology. But now that the tech gap has vanished, it's simply an uncompetitive liability. 3. The bureaucratic quagmire. German executives are crying about red tape. For once, they're not just whining. The process for getting a permit to build a new factory in Germany can be a multi-year odyssey of paperwork and legal challenges. Remember Tesla's Grunheide factory? It was hailed as a miracle for getting built in just over 2 years, but only through a series of pre-approvals that Elon Musk took at massive financial risk. Meanwhile, in China, a similar factory is built, and a road is rerouted for it, in 12 months. Capital flows where it can be deployed efficiently. It's flooding out of Germany. Prong 3, the geopolitical squeeze: no port in the storm. In past downturns, if China was weak, the Germans could pivot to the US or rely on their stable European base. As Jens Swedecum, an advisor to the German finance minister, rightly states in the article, this escape hatch has been welded shut. The US, under the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, passed in 2022, has become a protectionist fortress for EVs. Massive tax credits are available, but only for vehicles with final assembly in North America and with increasing percentages of battery components sourced domestically or from free trade partners. German-made EVs don't qualify for the full credits, making them thousands of dollars more expensive than a Tesla or a Ford. The US is no longer a substitute market, it's a competitor's turf. The home market is a mess. Economic stagnation plagues the continent. Furthermore, the EU's own ambitious Green Deal policies, particularly the plan to phase out combustion engines, originally by 2035, created policy whiplash. The German auto industry, heavily reliant on its profitable high-end combustion and hybrid models to fund its shaky EV transition, found itself being regulated out of its most profitable business. Now, Chancellor Merz's government is trying to soften those rules, but the damage is done. The uncertainty has crippled investment and created a chaotic market where consumers don't know what to buy. So you see, bosses, this isn't just about BYD building a cheaper car. It's a perfect storm, a market they misunderstood, a home base that became uncompetitive, and geopolitical walls rising up around their other key markets. This is where we zoom out from the point to the surface, from the auto industry to the entire German economic model. The comparison to Nokia is not hyperbole, it is a chillingly accurate diagnosis. Nokia in the mid-2000s made the best damn phones on the planet. They were indestructible. The hardware was superb. But they thought they were in the business of selling hardware. Then Apple came along with the iPhone and proved that the phone wasn't the product, the operating system and the app ecosystem were the product. Nokia's Symbian OS was clunky and closed. Apple's iOS was a gateway to a new world. Nokia was wiped out in less than 5 years. Germany's auto industry is Nokia. They make brilliant hardware. A 2025 Mercedes S-Class is a marvel of mechanical engineering. But it's running on Symbian while BYD, Xiaomi, and NIO are selling iOS and Android. This crisis threatens to unravel the entire social and economic fabric of Germany. The auto sector isn't just another industry. It is the heart of Industriestandort Deutschland, industrial location Germany. It accounts for roughly 5% of German GDP directly, but its influence is far greater. It anchors a vast ecosystem of suppliers, the famed Mittelstand, small and medium-sized family-owned companies that are the world's best at making one specific thing, be it a fuel injector, a special bearing, or a piece of factory automation equipment. What happens to the world's best fuel injector company when the world goes electric? What happens to the specialist in exhaust systems? They die. That's the brutal logic of creative destruction. The 700,000 people employed in the industry are just the beginning. For every job at VW or BMW, there are an estimated 2 to 3 more jobs in the supply chain. We are staring at the potential deindustrialization of Europe's economic core. The fallout, as the article notes, will not be contained within Germany's borders. Germany's auto sector is the engine of the European supply chain. A factory in Slovakia making harnesses, a plant in Spain stamping body panels, a tech firm in France developing sensors, they all feed the German beast. As the beast starves, the entire food chain collapses. This deepens the sense that Europe is becoming a museum of 20th century industry, unable to compete in the new global race for next generation technologies. So, what's the endgame? Chancellor Friedrich Merz is hosting a summit. Executives and union leaders are meeting to produce a unified position. This is political theater at its most tragic. They will talk about tax cuts, subsidies, and softer regulations. They are rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. The problem isn't the tax rate. The problem is that their product is fundamentally uncompetitive in the world's most important market. The problem is that their cost base is unsustainable. The problem is that they are years behind on the software that now defines a car. No summit can fix that. No €3 billion handout can reverse a decade of strategic blunders. What we are witnessing, bosses, is the end of an era. The era of German industrial dominance, built on the internal combustion engine, is over. The Das Auto slogan now sounds less like a confident declaration and more like a mournful epitaph. The path forward for Germany is agonizing. It involves either a managed, painful decline or a radical, wrenching reinvention that will cost hundreds of thousands of jobs and upend a century of industrial culture. As investors and observers, the message is clear. The old world is fading. The logic of capital is relentless. It has no loyalty to nations, brands, or history. It flows to innovation, efficiency, and a clear-eyed understanding of what the modern consumer truly wants. For a long time, that was Germany. It isn't anymore. That's the brutal truth. Until next time, stay sharp and don't get caught holding the keys to yesterday's technology. This is Boss Economics World, signing off.